All right, first of all, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me. I am very used to talking 3 hours straight without taking a breath, especially when you're teaching. That's very easy for me to do. So if you have questions or comments, concerns, please feel free to interrupt me at any point in time. So what I will be talking about is, in more or less few words, my life of 2016. This really was most of what I did in 2016. So the plan is I want to just briefly touch on what is a MOOC, what is Coursera, how does it all fit in, and then I'll talk a little bit about how we got started, how we developed the courses, launched them, what some of the outcomes are. Now, this is the Wikipedia definition of a MOOC, but to me it is a different format than what we're typically used to in the university. These courses are not for credit. There are people who can just sign up, take them, and they're also structured in a very different way. Once I embarked on this effort, I had to completely rethink how I am presenting material. Usually when we're teaching courses, there's some kind of a textbook, and you kind of follow that path, and you make up exams and so on. A lot of the things that I was doing in class are not that applicable to this. So it is a new way of thinking about learning. Now, a couple of other features is that they are massive. I think I surpassed the number of taught students in about 6 months with this specialization that I had in the classroom. So I think that number up to that point I'd been teaching for 5 years, plus before then in the PhD program, I think the number was somewhere around 600-700 students. I surpassed that with a few courses being launched. So the numbers are huge. Anybody can start. Sometimes not everybody finishes, but that's part of the system. Self-paced, even though there's a structure and a guidance to how fast learners should progress through this content. We're very flexible with these things. At some point, we can talk about college credits, which may or may not be applicable. One funny thing about badges or diplomas in this is that when I started launching these courses, I think I had 300 connections on LinkedIn. A year and a half later, I'm over 1,000. So, and probably the majority of them are people who have taken my courses from all over the world. So I think my LinkedIn network has tripled with people who took my courses. But they also can display their diplomas on LinkedIn. It's part of their profile. So that probably, I don't know how that has driven the development of this, but it definitely is a very cool feature. Now, I'll talk about some of the other things in here as we talk. So this course, or the set of courses, was launched on Coursera. And any questions about Coursera, I'm pointing to Kat, who is here, and every painful experience that I have is absolutely her fault. So I fully blame her. I didn't run away fast enough, and here is where I am. When we started this in fall of 2015, when I met Kat for the first time, I think it was September-ish, she was saying Coursera had somewhere just under 20 million learners on their platform. Now we're closer to more than 30 million or something like that. 31 million? Okay. I looked at Wikipedia, they said 31, I didn't want to quote that number. Now the way Coursera works is, Coursera is the platform, that's where all the learning happens. The content, however, comes from universities, some of them very well-known universities. So they partner with knowledge creators, offer a venue to share that knowledge, and that's where students know to come for the content. So it is, so far I can say it's been a great partnership. This is actually the front page of the specialization I created. As you see here, very low price point. And pretty much everything you see on this main page, if you were to go to it, was things I had to think about or things I had to write, pictures I had to find. And all of this is completely customized and to reflect what type of content you have. So this specialization is an entry-level specialization into supply chain management. It's people who have barely know the term. I guess you have to know the term to type it into, to search for it, or you see it on an email. I wanted this to be accessible to absolutely everybody, which is stuff I've never done before. I teach master students, I taught some undergraduate students, but this was completely new to me, and it's actually interesting from a professor's perspective to teach somebody who has zero background, or at least that was my assumption. Somebody who knows nothing about what I'm talking about, how do you teach them? Which that in and of itself was very interesting to me. So how does it work? There are 5 courses that make up the specialization. There are projects in there. At the end of it, they get not just a certificate for each course they pass, but also a certificate for the whole specialization. As I said, it's basic. The students or learners are learning through lectures that I recorded. There are readings in there, and I encourage them to learn a lot through the projects that they have to complete. So I'll give you an example. One of the first projects that they have to do is on transportation. I'm sure everybody in this room has ordered something online, and you get a little link to UPS or FedEx, and you click on it and it said, oh, your shipment was recognized by the carrier, and it departed one location, then it goes to another location, then another location, and then eventually it shows up at your front door. First project is, take one of those and decompose it. Tell me why it went from there to there to there to there. What is happening there? Now, that's something that everybody experienced. And by doing that, they learn about different transportation routes and cross docks and hubs and terminals and all of the things that I talked about in lectures. They'll have to put together and say, oh, this is why this works that way. So, of course, they have to show that they mastered the material, there are quizzes, there are other assignments, project type assignments, where they review each other's work in a peer review process, and that determines whether they have mastered the content. So overall, each course is 4 weeks. Last one is 6 weeks, for a total of 22 weeks overall. Now, if somebody wanted to work a lot faster, they could do it in a much shorter time frame. I think a lot of people take a lot longer. So it really depends on everybody's situation. questions about anything I've just said to this point? Okay. So why? Well, I kind of told you the why is because Kat got me into this, and I regret the decision ever since, but no, not really. Okay. So what is the current situation in my department? I'm in the supply chain management department, and within Rutgers Business School, we're not too shy about what are we about. Want to have a reputation, and rankings are part of that. Our dean is very, very keen on seeing rankings going up the correct direction. Revenue. We have, in the undergraduate department, we have the second largest population of undergraduate supply chain management students in the country. Every year we're like, next semester we're going to be just a little bit bigger than Arizona State, and they keep growing faster. Or they keep growing as well. So we're still number 2, but we're trying to get bigger. And we also want to affect our communities. We want to be a good citizen, not just locally, but also regionally in the state of New Jersey and surrounding area, and maybe even internationally if at all possible. So with that backdrop, where does this specialization fit in? Well, we have offerings at the undergraduate, the graduate, and the doctoral level. And I can tell you this, and Kat and I were just talking about this before this presentation. When we set out to do this, I didn't really know what to expect, but one of the hopes was that maybe we get some students to come to one of these programs. And I think I'm counting correctly. In the last year or so, we had 5 students in our online Master of Supply Chain Management program who came from Coursera in one way or another. Either they heard about it there, or we've actively advertised it as well and said, look, if you're not sure, why don't you take a few of these courses? If you still like it, then how about you apply to our program? And we got some people like that. So it does drive enrollment to a certain extent. And the interesting thing is, one of the, I'll keep telling this one story about this student from Thailand. He completed, I think, 3 or 4 of these courses, applied to our online masters. At that point, by the way, I think we had 2 international students. And we looked at his application, and his background in supply chain management was about 0. With the exception, he took 4 or so of these courses. We would have never accepted somebody with 0 background because it's a master's program. We expect people to have a background. We took a chance on him. A semester or 2 after, he's a straight A student. So there's something there. I'm not going to try to make more out of this than that, but there's something there. Because if you had the willpower to sit through all of these lectures and do the quizzes and teach yourself this material, that says something. I'm not going to say that says more than other forms of evaluation or anything like that, but it means something. So our thinking was we'll use these courses as sort of a funnel into degree programs to a certain extent, and it did work. I put in here executive education. We have a number of executive programs at Rutgers, and when they complete these week-long programs, after they pay $5,000, they get told that You have a 3-credit waiver if you apply for one of our degree programs. Exec Ed, we got 0 students. Coursera, I'm counting 5. So, you know, we thought both of those would be sort of funnels. The other one is brand building. One of the appealing things for us was that we're the first specialization on supply chain management. There was one lone course from another university overseas, but we're the first specialization, the first set of courses from a US university. And that was very nice. And Coursera is very good about sort of protecting that space. Now, the next topic is infrastructure, and a lot has changed in a year and a half, but you're looking at the infrastructure from before. That's all we had. Didn't have anything like that. So I kind of said, yes, I was going to do it. I was supposed to get help. And then I didn't get help. And then I flew out to Mountain View, spent 3 days with Coursera, told me what I needed to do, and then I just sat down every day and I executed. And I came up with the structure of the course, and the way they taught me was, look, you start with the outcomes, you design the assessment, then from there you backtrack into the content that you need to have for the students to pass those assessments and so on. The studio was in my basement. It was an ad hoc studio. We hired an instructional designer to help me think through it, and we hired a videographer. And the first course that we shot, they're both there. I had a producer and a camera person, and then afterwards it was just me and the camera person for the other ones. But we kind of got in a roll, and I kept my little marks on the floor. I knew where to stand, I knew which direction to look, and he knew how to shoot me, and he knew how I sound naturally. So he told me, no, that's not good enough. So take 2, take 3, take 10, take 15, and so on. So it was pretty intense. Then what we also did was, we're like, look, this is an introductory course. We want to make it exciting. So we went on site. So you see me standing next to a highway when I talk about trucking, and you see trucks whizzing by, and you see me in front of a Walmart. What you don't see is that 10 seconds later somebody came running after me. Then where else did we go? We went to Starbucks. We went to an auto dealer. And again, 10 seconds after the camera turns off, we start running almost. So we put in that part, being sort of in the field with the things I was doing in my makeshift studio, and really just trying to boil everything down to the basics. So we created the course structure first, then once that was done, popped in the lecture videos, and we're ready to go. At this point, once we reached this for each course, we repeated the whole thing. We're about a month away from launching. Coursera will then take all of this, beta test it, I get feedback, and then I get my to-do list of 20 or 30 items. Fix this, fix that, this is not clear, make this better, and. Now, just to give you a little bit of a timeline, so Kat and I met in September of 2015, so sometime in winter we figured out how the contract or the agreement can be signed. I spent most of the spring to develop the structure, at least for the first course, and then we kept going every 6 weeks. We launched another course starting in, so the very first course was launched the Monday, Labor Day of 2016. It was on a Monday morning. We spent most of the summer shooting videos and so on. In terms of the instructional design, I had everything. By the time the videographer came, because I knew I was paying him $1,200 per day to be in my basement, I had to be ready for absolutely every word I was going to say. They tried to convince me to use a teleprompter. I won that battle. I said, I know the material. I wrote the book. So I was able to deliver it just with a few notes that I would look at 5 seconds before we hit record. But nevertheless, that just means there's way more preparation. And then the content went on to the platform. This is a view of what I see as the instructor. So every course is divided into modules. Modules all have learning objectives. Modules are then subdivided into specific lectures. Everything is tightly packaged, and you want to have it as clear as possible. Once this thing goes live, the involvement that I have is very minimal. I get emails about, I can't seem to figure out how to pass this one quiz. So if I did answer a lot of those, it's like, all right, here's the mistake. It's like when I want to tease my students in my class, where we go over some of what I teach is forecasting related, and I use very similar assignments, and they're like, oh, this doesn't look quite right, the graph doesn't line up. It's like, well, it's because you did this and this and this without looking at their spreadsheet, because I've seen basically every mistake that can be made. So there's that. Learners also have discussion forums, and they talk to each other a lot. Because I monitor them sometimes. There's definitely a lot of interaction going on. Well, now we're also getting ready to ramp up our other online courses. So we actually have a studio. We have multiple cameras. We can do teleprompter, which I still refuse to do. We can do lightboard, which I don't know if that would be a whole nother presentation in and of itself. So those of you who've never seen a lightboard, as part of this, for one of the courses, we built one in my basement. So we had a little coffee table that had a glass top. So we borrowed that, some chairs, some duct tape, some black fabric, and some markers, and a strip of LED lights that we bought at Home Depot. And that was our lightboard. And I was able to write formulas down and explain how they work and so on. But we have a real one now at school. 8x4, everything built in, works really well. We also have an annotation board now, so part of this, it's so much easier when next summer we're going to do another specialization, sort of the second, more advanced version of this content. So this is actually a screen grab from one of them. We're able to, this was me in the basement. Okay, I took that from somebody else on a teleprompter. This is my lightboard. It was about this big, but it worked. And I didn't really use annotation board, but I did do, because there is some quantitative stuff in supply chain management, I did do some screen captures where I show them a spreadsheet, and here's how You take the formula, put it into a spreadsheet. Here's how everything works. Okay, so now, how did it work out? Well, I don't know. I see Kat smiling, so I think they're happy with me. So as part of, once you launch a course or a specialization, you actually get some great information. And I've used sort of screen grabs from this map for a bunch of different things. So this is a map of the world, obviously. And the shading, I don't know how visible it is from further back in the room, but the shading shows how many learners per million people there are. So all in all, we have 1,500 learners from the United States, and it's taken it's not currently, they take snapshots at certain points in time. But obviously US for us is the biggest, but I was trying to roughly count, what does this 1,500 number mean? And I went down the list of countries and I added up all those numbers. I think we got to, that's about 30%. I don't know if that's unusual for this, it's typical. So 30%, so partly when one of my things at RBS is I'm trying to get more online courses. It's like, that's a slide I show. Look, people, there's an opportunity. So assuming, and this is probably still mostly US-centric, but we can get 70% outside of the US by doing this. That's the strength of the Rutgers brand. That's how valuable people think this content could be. We might even be able to do better than that. Now, this is not surprising. So this is the demographic breakdown. For this type of content, 80% male, 20% female, not unusual. Even though I will say, as a discipline, and those of you not really familiar with it, we actually had 1 year in our MBA program when we had 52% female versus 48% male. So that's very skewed. What's interesting is sort of the age. It's younger people, but not all. I mean, young millennials are right here in the 50%. So 50% are non-millennials. 56% of the learners are not students. 32% have master's degrees. 53% are employed full-time. I mean, this is really cool stuff for me because it shows me we're reaching people we would never, ever be able to reach. And of course, when you do that and people like the content and they think they got something out of it, and we've seen the really cool Coursera videos that you guys put up with people saying how it changed their lives by taking some of these courses. This is really cool stuff. So another thing that I can show is here's how many people looked at the page. Obviously, a lot of people are looking. 5,000 enrolled. Now, enrolled doesn't mean they necessarily paid for it, so that's the difference here. And some used to pay. These are the ones that pay right now, that have an active subscription. And 240 completed all 5. The very vast majority complete 1 or 2 courses and they get everything they need to get and they stop. So there obviously is a drop-off. And you actually see that if you look at the 5 courses. Here's the active learners, here's the ones that completed, and that number obviously goes down. I can't tell you how long I thought about the right order of this. Which is the one that I think that was a week. I spent a good week thinking about it. What's the one course to start with? Obviously, this is the capstone that puts everything together, but how do you order those four? And in the end, I'll tell you what flipped the coin for it. I looked at Google Trends, and logistics or supply chain logistics in that order had the highest number of searches. So